in the absence of truth, everything has become ambiguous. And with that comes an attitude of hostility. So you don't want to be so creative that you become destructive rather than disruptive.
Ooh.
See?
So how do you know when that shock is protecting you from, hurting yourself?
That's a very, very, very good question. First of all, is what's on the other side of the shock worth it? The shock is going to hurt. Anytime you are the first at anything, it is going to hurt.
Thank y'all for coming out tonight for a disruptive conversation with a man who I am so happy on Sunday mornings they decide to go live on YouTube every Sunday. There's nothing like being at the Potter House, but Bedside Baptist will do on Sunday mornings on YouTube. How are you, Bishop?
I'm good, how are you?
Disruptive thinking.
Yeah.
Let's start with the basics. What is a disruptor and what is disruptive thinking?
I think that to boil it down to its simplest terms is when you stop blaming other people for the maladies of your life and come to the conclusion that there's something in the way that you are processing your life, that if you change the way you think, you can change the outcomes in your life. I always like to say that mindsets control assets. So you can't change assets. And when I say assets, I don't just mean economically, but just in every area of your life. You can't change assets until you change mindsets. And we don't do that quickly enough because it is so much easier to be the victim and blame other people.
Well, what is disruption to you?
Growth, change, anything, you cannot leave the ground comfortable if you put a seed in it. The seed, the rooting process will disrupt the ground. And anybody who wants you to stay the same, they're asking you not to grow. If you're going to grow, you're going to disrupt some things in order to develop to the full capacity of you. And here's the other thing that I think is important. The only person that I'm in a race with is me. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be Steve Harvey. I'm not trying to be president. I'm not trying to be anybody else. I'm not trying to be Dr. King. I'm only in a race to see how far I was meant to go. Where is my destiny? What is my best? And once I reach my best, the opiate, the extreme evolutionary progressive understanding of my own self, the outworking of the internal, completes me. It is not running against other people because that is going to be an endless race. There's always going to be somebody who's stronger than you, who's bigger than you, who's more smart than you, who's better looking than you. There's always somebody out there. If you're running against them, I can't fight my battle with your equipment.
Woo! Lord have mercy. When do we know we need to disrupt?
I think that the most powerful thing about being a human being is the power of a decision. And I see so many of us who don't make decisions, we just complain. And complaining is the weakest thing you can do. Murmuring and complaining doesn't change anything, it just deepens it. So if you replace grumbling with decisions, that is a catalyst for transformation. When people argue, I'm not a good arguer. It's not that I can't do it, it's that I turn into somebody I don't like. Yes, I'm serious. So I found it more powerful to make decisions, to control who comes in or out of my life, to control who I allow to have access to me, to control the atmosphere around me the brilliancy of what I build, I was telling them in the back, my leadership style is team building. And if you're a team builder, you soon begin to understand you are no better than the people you put around you.
That's right.
And if you don't surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, if your ego demands that you must be the smartest person in the room at all times, you will miss the possibilities of what you could be if you surrounded yourself with great people.
How do you keep disruption pure and good?
I think if you don't confuse disruption with destruction, disruption isn't destruction. So I've got, I like to cook. So everybody who follows me on Instagram knows at least during the holidays I'm going to cook.
Oh no, them ribs be looking pre-blessed.
Listen.
Them ribs he be cooking look like they came with a blessing already.
You tell him, you tell him my brother can throw it down. But cooking is disruptive. If you take flour and eggs and butter and put it out with cream cheese and vanilla extract in its original form, if you're not willing to disrupt it, you can't see what it can be. So the whole process of mixing and blending together and stirring and pouring in the pan and putting it in the fire, imagine if that was you getting mixed together with something and put it in the fire. That's pretty disruptive. But there's no way to be creative without being disruptive. You can't paint a picture without being disruptive. You can't build this building without being disruptive. It's going to get dirty. It's going to get messy. It's going to be, creativity thrives in disruption. And yet most of us run away from disruption. So we want to keep things nice and neat at the expense of progress. So just keep it quiet. Don't make me uncomfortable. Don't take me out of my element. Don't put me in a room where I'm not sure of myself. We're more concerned about comfort than we are growth. So the whole narrative of disruptive thinking gives you permission to evolve, to grow, and not have to apologize. I think I was telling you before that I grew up in a little raggedy house on the side of the hills in West Virginia, and with 3 kids in one room. My parents were in the other room. They finally got a little bit of money and fixed up the attic and turned it into bedrooms. My brother and I shared one side, my sister shared the other, but you had to go upstairs. And what I learned about steps is this: it's not the step you step on that creaks. It's the one you step away from. So when you're walking up the step creaks when you release the weight of being on that step and move to the next one. What am I saying? It's not where you're going that's fighting you, it's where you left. Okay. So you have to decide, do you want to stay on the old step to keep the noise down? Or are you willing to deal with the noise in order to have the elevation?
Man. In Disruptive Thinking, you wrote, the clanging dissonance of violence, anger, fear, and political dissolution threatens to suffocate us all. Anger is the new American pastime. I think I know what you mean, but what do you mean?
I just think we're so angry. We're so angry. You cannot get on social media and say anything about anything and not come up under fire by some group or clique or club. And then if you say the alternate statement, you get fought the other way. And it's not the disagreement that is discouraging. It is the death of civility. The beautiful thing about democracy is that we were allowed to have our own ideas and opinions until we were confronted with a higher truth that melted our opinions into unity. Instead, we're living in a time that opinions have devoured truth. So now there is no absolute. You have a truth, I have a truth, she has a truth, and we're all fighting for our truth. But really, there is only one truth. You know, I saw this sign and it tickled me. It said, men lie, women lie.
Numbers don't?
Numbers don't.
Yeah.
2 + 2 is 4, whether you're in Africa or whether you're in Anguilla, or whether you're in the Ukraine. There are some things that transcend opinion. There's nothing to fight about. It's just true. 2 + 2 is 4. In the absence of truth, everything has become ambiguous. And with that comes an attitude of hostility, where my getting up seems to make you feel like it was at your expense that I rose. And then conversely, what it makes you think that killing me will make you king. But killing me won't crown you. And yet we walk down this path of anger and hostility, and what we don't know is this, that depression is just anger turned inside. So when you start talking about our own health and wellness, it is us attacking us. As much as we have outside attackers, and we were talking off stage about the killings and the shootings and all of that, as bad and as horrific as that is, the damage we do to ourselves is far more debilitating than the damage that other people do to us. When you are angry and in a constant state of rage, your pulse raises, your body secretes hormones that it has nothing to do with, that turns into anxiety, that turns into hypertension, that turns into everything that is counterproductive to you. So while you are angry at me, you are killing you. Okay, anger, unforgiveness, hostility, walking around with suppressed rage. And angry isn't always just the people who blow up. Quiet people can be angry too. Some of us internalize our anger to our own destruction. And so I think that the death of civility, anger has become the new pastime sport. If you watch the news, they specifically and intentionally get people on to fight. Because what they're really doing is not trying to give you the news, they're trying to deliver ratings so they can sell advertisement at a higher price. And they know that congeniality and niceness and normalness does not draw eyeballs, but conflict and rage and combativeness draws eyeballs, which increases profit margins, which makes people more money. And then the people who are raging at each other while the lights are on go to lunch. Come on, somebody. Come on. What we don't know, and I didn't know till I got in the business, is that those people are paid to have this argument, and they are brought on to have this debate to enrage you. And then they go to lunch, and you go get a gun and go kill somebody.
That's right. That's right.
So we are being baited, not to mention the algorithms are bringing you truth in the flavor of what you search for. So you have this personalized conveyor belt where your ideas, whatever they are, whether they're proud or racist or sexual or perverted or whatever they are, the algorithms are constantly feeding you what you asked about. Mm-hmm. So the commercials that pop up are all designed and tailor-made around the cookies and whatnot that are in your system, so that what happens is we are self-delusional. Mm-hmm. So we create this climate, if it's hatred, if it's malice, if it's racism, whatever it is, where the technology is bringing you more of whatever it is you ask for. You've typed in recipes, they'll bring you more recipes. You type in how to make weapons, they're going to give you more of whatever you type in. And what we are doing, we're drinking the Kool-Aid. I grew up with the Jim Jones thing, where everybody drank the Kool-Aid and they all that. We're drinking the Kool-Aid, but we're not mixing the Kool-Aid. We are African Americans in particular, when I say we, and now I'm talking about African Americans, are the nation's greatest consumers and the poorest creators. When people say we're not into technology, that's absolutely wrong. We are absolutely into technology. You might be homeless and you got the latest Apple phone.
That's right. Y'all on Facebook every day.
Yeah. So you can spend hours scrolling on Instagram with no job. It's not that we're not into technology. No, it's true. Tell me when I start lying. Now, It's not that we're not into it, we're just into consuming it. We're not into making it. We're not into coding. We're not into developing it. We're not into making apps. We're used to downloading apps, and we're not taught to think creatively. One of the reasons I wrote this book, Charlamagne, was simply this. I'm in this thing about working with entrepreneurs. We started a program called Good Soil, and we're developing and training. Thank you. Yeah, we're developing and training entrepreneurs how to scale up, because about 96% of African-American businesses have less than 2 employees or sole proprietorships, and they don't know how to scale up. You know why? It is baked into our culture to hustle. Okay, so hustle means you've got your hands on everything. If you got your hands on everything, you can't have many things, because you only got 2 hands. And so we had to hustle because we couldn't get hired. But as we pass from generation, it has become baked in. So whether you're a street hustler, whether you're a perverted hustler, whether you are in business, barbering, accounting, doing people's tax returns, you're actually doing the work. You're frying the chicken. You're washing the hair. You're doing, but not being. You're acting, but not thinking. And baked into the way we live, it's a hustle. You call it a business, but if you can't walk away from it for 2 months and still have income, it's not a business, it's a hustle. And so that's why we never really scale up into real profitability, because we're living hand to mouth, mixing the money from the business into our operating account, don't have an EIN number, never set up an LLC or LLP, don't have an S corporation, C corporation, we're sole proprietorship. What we did was create a job. And we hustle. And the problem with that is this: hustling is not a bad thing until you do it too long. The problem with it, with an escalating economic conundrum that we're in right now, where the prices are becoming exorbitant through inflation. When it's just you doing the work, you have to run faster. The higher the cost gets, the more the hamster has to run faster and faster, and we're running ourselves to death. We're running ourselves to divorce. We're running ourselves into hypertension. We're running ourselves into diabetes and kidney failure and all that sort of thing like that. And my question is, if you would just disrupt the way you think, if you would just disrupt the way you think, if you're an entrepreneur, and invest in your business, not you. Delayed gratification for a minute. If we would stop buying other people's names and start making our name greater, if you would buy at least a little bit of stock for every 3 pairs of shoes you got, instead of the 4th one, let's just buy some stock. Let's just do some things that are really smart. But that requires disrupting the way you think. That requires being rejected by your friends, because now you have a different goal than them. And people love you until you get a different goal from them.
Right. I want to ask about that. Like, how do you keep going when it seems like, you know, everything is against you and people start to be against you?
You know, you cannot ascend to the upper echelon of any sociological construct without developing a certain desensitized feeling about other people's opinions. If you cater so much to how other people think about you, it says something about you. That there's a certain level of brokenness that needs affirmation. And I'm sensitive to broken people, but I would suggest to you that you have an inner circle of people that affirm you, so that the outer circle of people don't distress you. Because what we must have to remember is that through our phones, we have allowed millions of people into our lives who don't know us. And you'll end up arguing with somebody that you will never meet in your entire life about something that really doesn't matter. And it is the absence of intimacy. The absence, I gotta sit up for this.
Yeah, break that down. The absence of intimacy.
The absence of intimacy creates loneliness, causes us to overvalue strangers and devalue people who are closer. You see? So
You almost made me curse, Bishop. I forgot who I was in front of just now.
What we really need is somebody who really knows us, who really values us, flaws and all, who can appreciate intimacy. See, and I'm not gonna give that to you right away because that's precious. That's all I've got. But that's what creates the feeling of not being alone. It's not a crowd. I'm in crowds all the time. If crowds would do it, I would be fine. It's not a crowd. I would rather have a few people who knew me well than to have millions who knew me loosely. Okay, and if you draw your affirmation and your strength from your faith, from your family, from your friends, circles you can control, then you are less moved by what people say outside. And I think, are you feeling what I'm saying? I think we have become too emotional to be successful, because most successful people that I have met are not extremely sensitive because they can't afford to be. In order to accelerate yourself, your brand, your business, your ideas, your concepts, your church, whatever it is, you have to build up. In my book, I talk about two dogs I had. They're Connie Corsos. I still got one of them. The other one passed away, but Bentley and Honey. And so I put up invisible fences to keep them in parameters. I have like a farm-like backyard. It's quite a few acres of land. There are coyotes back there. I'm in Texas. There are rattlesnakes back there. There are beavers and all kinds of stuff back there. So the part of the land that I quadrant off where it was safe for them, I put an invisible fence in. Invisible fence requires a collar around the dog's neck so that when the dog gets too close to the parameter, the collar starts to buzz. And the closer they get to the fence, the more intense it becomes to keep them from going across the line. It's invisible, but effective. How many walls do you have up that are invisible, but are holding you back? And what I noticed was Bentley would stay in the fence. He couldn't see it, but he stayed in it. Honey would take the shock just to get to the other side, okay? And I don't care what you did, she would take the shock. And then eventually she started gnawing her collar off so that she would not feel the shock. So when I use it metaphorically in the book, to me, disruptive thinkers are people who are willing to endure the temporary discomfort of getting into the next dimension rather than to stay within the lines that somebody else drew. The lines that somebody else drew is the auspices through which we have colonialism. The lines that somebody else drew is affecting our voting bloc in our contemporary society. The lines that somebody else drew has rearranged the continent of Africa. The lines that somebody else drew has given us, in my day, colored fountains and clean fountains. The lines that somebody else drew in your day is redlining the ability to vote. The lines that somebody else drew determines how far you can go, and now you think you're somebody, you forgot where you came from. The lines that somebody else drew says it's inappropriate for you to be in this room and you feel out of place because you're not like them. But when you have been shocked enough and decide that I'm willing to pay the price to get to my next, then you're like honey. Honey took the shock to get into the wide open fields of what was next. And I thought about all the invisible fences, some of which I imposed on myself. And they're not all fences that somebody else drew. Some of the fences I imposed upon myself through my own fear, my own insecurity, my lack of exposure, because it's hard to be what you didn't see. And as I begin to become more exposed, I tell people all the time, exposure is the biggest word I can spell. Because the greatest gift I can give you is exposure. You cannot disrupt your thinking if you have not been exposed to other options. If you cannot take your children to the finest school, or you cannot buy them the finest clothes, if you can drive them through the neighborhood, if you can put them in the office where conversations are being held about more than hip hop, nothing wrong with hip hop, but about more than hip hop. If you can learn the words to a song, you can learn the code. The reason I am out here like this, I don't need to be out here like this at this age and stage anymore. I did this when I was in my 30s, okay? When I listen at Black economic summits talking about by 2050, the median income for underserved communities, Black in particular, would be zero. Now, true enough, by the time 2050 comes, I won't be here, but I'll have grandchildren here and children here. Median income is zero. It's the loss of middle class, which puts you in a third world country situation. The haves,
have-nots,
and the have-nots. Excuse me, Tyler, but that statement is prophetic of where the entire country is going. It's just that underserved communities go first. We're losing our middle class. We're losing our middle everything. And if we don't change the way we think, we won't be. I've got 350 people on staff. 350 people on staff. I have 4 different companies that you don't see on Sunday morning that I didn't have any reason to show because I'm a doer, not a shower. Until it became necessary that I began to realize that all they think I am is a preacher. And all they want to talk about is church. You wouldn't have anybody else who had done $500 million at the box office in films and talk to them about church.
No.
Yeah. But that's what happens when people put you in a fence. This is who you are. This is what you know. This is what you can do. Bypassing, I have human resources, I have accountants, I have got a room full of accountants, I've got bookkeepers, I've got outside auditors, I've got for-profit companies, not-for-profit companies, I've got foundations separated from EDCs and CDCs and all of that, and all of these are separate constructs that don't have anything to do with the Potter's house, and then I get in a conversation with you and you want to ask me about the choir.
The choir is fire at the Potter House, though.
The choir, I love the choir. I'm not against the choir. And why did I do that? I'm not saying every preacher should do that. I didn't do that as a preacher. I did that as a person. I was a person before I was a preacher. Don't let your calling or your livelihood destroy your personhood. You know, where they define you by the Breakfast Club and don't know that you're a person, that creates loneliness, that creates pain, because everybody calls you Charlamagne and you know that's not your real name. And after a while, you hunger for somebody who really knows you.
Yeah, I like when you call me Leonard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we can do that, Leonard, because what is important that you say what you like, that you go after what you want, and you find fulfillment in what you do. Because I was raised, and I started out the book talking about, I was raised by a dying father. That changes everything. He got sick when I was 10, and he died when I was 16, and I watched 8 years of his steady decline down the hill. And the greatest gift, there were many gifts he gave me, my work ethic, my focus, my drive, my entrepreneurial inclination started with him. He started a business with a mop and a bucket, ended up with 52 employees in West Virginia in the 60s.
Wow.
Okay, so I grew up in that environment where he and my mother were arguing about how they were going to file taxes and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's crazy. But I started out the book talking about what a dying parent teaches his child. It's amazing how he taught me how to value living by dying. He taught me that life is just a moment. It's just a vapor. My biggest birthday wasn't like my 50th birthday or my 65th birthday. That was amazing events, all that kind of stuff. My biggest birthday was my 49th birthday because my father died at 48. So when I became 49, I broke the curse. Okay. And the first thing, if I could see my father right now, I would tell him, Daddy, in June I'll be 66. Look at me. I got gray hair. That's why I wear it. My grandfather was murdered at 22. Okay, I'm older than either of my grandfathers already, okay? What he taught me, not just the longevity of life, but don't let anybody's mouth stop your feet from moving. You understand what I'm saying? Life is too short for me to be running around taking your temperature before I come in the room. I can't be bothered by what's going on in your head about me. I can't regulate your emotions, your attitudes, your opinions, your dysfunctions, your therapy, and whether you're on your meds or not. And you might be typing something because you didn't get your meds for my. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you're mad at your wife. Maybe your dog isn't working. Maybe you got erectile dysfunction. I don't know what's wrong with you. But I don't have time to work through all of your issues in my lifespan because my dying father taught me the urgency of living.
I'm glad you said that, Bishop, because I can't stand when people sit by you and they sigh. I'm not about to ask you what's wrong. I got my own issues.
I get it. And see, it's my job to ask you what's wrong. And I don't mind doing that until you think that your opinion authorizes you to be my warden. So we were talking in the back about artificial intelligence and how it's taken over. So people think it's going to take over. No, it's already taken over. We're behind the 8 ball. It's been taken over. It's behind everything. But when you're in your house and you cut off your phone, it's still listening.
That's right.
Okay. So we're experiencing the death of privacy. The only place they have not invaded yet is in between my ears. Thinking. Nobody, my wife can lay right up against me and not know what I'm thinking. It is the final frontier of privacy. It's all you have left till you open your mouth. Until you open your mouth, nobody knows what you think. So you have to choose, Joseph, who you're going to tell your dream to. And you have to choose risk versus reward. Okay, risk, everything has a risk. Make sure that the reward warrants the risk. Simply stated, I say, never go to battle where there are no spoils. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If there's nothing to be gained, there's nothing to fight for. So everything that that there's nothing to be gained from in the fight is a distraction from the real victory is over here. So while you're over here putting out this fire over here, the real victory is over here. This has come as a distraction to break your focus, because in order to win at anything, you have to focus. You don't get to be Tiger Woods without focus.
That's right.
You don't get to be Serena Williams without focus. You don't get to be Angela Bassett without focus. You don't get to be Denzel Washington without focus. You don't get to run a Fortune 100 company without focus. You have to focus. It's not enough that you went to school. You have to focus. And the problem with us is we are so into our feelings. Like never before, we're so into how I feel. I don't like her. I don't like him. I don't like this. And because we're so into our feelings, we can't do business. Because business is not an emotion.
That's right.
It's a science. It has nothing to do with me liking you.
Yes.
I don't have to like you to do business with you. That's why they make contracts. So I'll shut up. Go ahead.
I want to. He preaching. I want to go back to your cane corsos, right? Mm-hmm. Because everybody's not a disruptor. Mm-hmm. And when I think about your cane corsos, one of them was constantly trying to get out. The other one knew better. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them are wrong, right?
No, neither one of them are wrong. And so I'm not trying to make somebody disruptive who's not, because every disruptor needs a supporter. Mm-hmm. And so while some of us are fence jumpers and risk takers, then we still need other people that control, manage the yard. There's a difference between a manager and a leader. Both of them are significant. Now, I'm a leader. I'm not a manager. I'm not a manager. I don't have that anointing on me to manage, okay? The reason I know that is my eyes don't light up when I do it, they glaze over. If you're working a job that your eyes are glazing over while you're doing it, it's not for you. You should be doing something that when you do it, it makes your eyes light up, even when it's hard, even when it's tough, even when it's difficult. The more we talk, the more energy I get, because I am wired to do this. I'm created to do this. Lock me up in an office as an accountant and have me trying to balance a budget sheet and a ledger and watch how fast I go crazy. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the person who does that isn't valuable. I need them. So having a balance between disruptive thinkers and leaders and managers and people who stay within fences and keep you within guidelines keeps me out of jail. So I sit down with the lawyer and I say, well, can we do this? Or can we do that? And they say, well, you could do this, but if you do that, that's going to be illegal. See, there are some boundaries that must be respected.
That's right.
So you don't want to be so creative that you become destructive rather than disruptive.
Ooh.
See?
So how do you know when that shock is protecting you from, hurting yourself?
That's a very, very, very good question. First of all, is what's on the other side of the shock worth it? The shock is going to hurt. Anytime you are the first at anything, it is going to hurt. Anytime you break through a boundary into the next dimension of you, there's going to be pain, whether it's emotional pain or alienation in the workplace or being an immigrant in a new frontier on a job where everybody walks in and says, good morning. Good morning. Yes. Yes. Bring me some coffee when you get a chance. That kind of condescending tone. There's going to be pain breaking down barriers. Right now, a friend of mine has been sending me all of these articles and materials on Black women leaving corporate America in droves. You know why? When you go into a construct that is not designed by you or for you, you are an immigrant in what's next until you can be there long enough to own what's next. So being an immigrant is the cost of growth. Anytime you migrate beyond the fence, you're an immigrant on the other side. You don't know the rules. You don't know what predators are over there. You don't know where the snakes are. You don't know if the coyotes are coming. You don't know what's over there. But that's the price you pay to get to what's next. So you enter into your next as a student, not a teacher. Okay, so let me show you real quick what I mean. So you can count to 10, you're at the top of the game. 10 is the highest number. I don't care if you got $1 billion, all you got is a bunch of dimes. Because in our numerical system, you can't go higher than 10. When you get to 10, you have to go back to 1 again. 11 is 1 again. So when you go to 11, you can't expect to be treated like you did when you were 10, because now you're at the infancy stages of the next development, okay? You follow what I'm saying? Okay? So now you can go 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You're at the top of your game. Now you got to decide, am I willing to be at the top of my game at 20 or go back to 1 again to get into the next dimension and become a student again, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, okay? Every one of us, when we get to the top of it, there are some of us that are bored with 10. And we crave to be 1 again on the next level. And as long as I'm learning, I'm living.
That's right.
As long as I'm thirsting and hungering for more information, more knowledge, more exposure, more situations. And my kids tell me, they say, Daddy, you're not scared of anything. You'll walk out on the stage and talk to anybody. You'll go anywhere, travel to any country and do anything. You're not scared of anything. I said, get out of here. Scared of everything.
Do it scared.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. I do it scared. I do it knees knocking. I do it because I'm willing to take the shock of challenging my fear to say, you can't hold me back from where I'm trying to go. I'm scared to death. But worse than being scared of what's next, I'm scared of not going. Because I would rather try and fail than stay where it's safe and get old and wonder what could have been if I had pushed myself a little bit further. That's what my dying father taught me. Check out the first chapter.
One of my favorite chapters is, being married to a disruptor. So how do you succeed being married to a disruptor?
Don't marry another one. I think my wife is so steady. She's going to drive home the same way. She's going to go to the same grocery store. She's going to have the same person do her nails every day at Thursday at 3 o'clock. She is... And I'm like, bing, 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 bing. But I realized that part of my attraction to her was she was so opposite. She is my steady. I am her excitement. You understand?
Hey.
I stopped it right there. I didn't go any further than
Don't
that.
go too far, Bishop.
I got to keep my day job.
Invisible fence.
Yeah,
it's an invisible fence.
That's
right.
Invisible fence. But she would stay in the house. Single women, listen to me. She would stay in the house if there wasn't a man to say, hey, let's go eat. Hey, let's go take a trip. Let's do so and so. Because that's the way her personality is, okay? Until there is someone else in your life, date yourself. Remind yourself to do something that you wouldn't normally do to make your life more interesting. Expose yourself to something different even if there's nobody there to peck you on the shoulder. Because what we do is balance each other. So what you do with a disruptive person is let them be disruptive while you are stable. And what you do being married to a stable person rather than converting them to be disruptive because you think they're boring. They're not boring, they're foundational. And if you don't have a foundation, you can't go up in the air like that. You see, and what I talk about in the book is how to identify disruptive thinkers in your children and not be so quick to punish them. Because certain children color outside of the lines, maybe they're going to be architects. So give them blank sheets of paper. Who says you have to color inside the lines? Somebody drew the line. And a wise parent is like a great CEO. A great CEO can spot what's in you and put you in a position to shine. I walked in with my grandbaby, and I was doing this tour at the church, and my granddaughter, one of Sarah's daughters, was in there in the tour, and there were no lights on in the sanctuary, and we have flashlights up under the pews in case of an emergency. So she went over there and she said, "Papa," she said, I'm gonna get the flashlight. And so we can take this picture. So she got the flashlight, she turned it on the people. So I said, "Mackenzie," I said, "why don't you let somebody else hold the flashlight so you can be in the picture?" She said, "No, I want to hold the light." And immediately I started watching her. I got back to the house and I was getting ready to do a selfie picture with a group of people. And she'd started putting up books to hold my phone while I took the picture. I said, "Look at her solving problems. Look at her wanting to hold the light rather than be in the picture." And I started telling my daughter, "You should send her to this kind of school. You should take her to this kind of ballet, Broadway play. You should take her back behind the production. You should show her." See, most of us never got fertilized. Yeah. You can't be good soil without fertilization. And fertilization means putting you in areas of stimulation. There are grown people right now who you think you're tired, you're not tired, you're bored. You need to be stimulated. You need to be challenged. You need to disrupt your normal, break your pattern, dress up and then figure out where you're gonna go. Do something for yourself. I'll stop.
You know, I want you to talk about a time in your career when being disruptive helped pave the way for something great.
There's so many things. I've been disruptive all my life. I mean, all of my life. My sister used to be up in the bedroom hollering out the window. She's up there reading them Harlequin novels and stuff and supposed to be babysitting. And she hollering out the window talking about, "Tommy, what you doing?" I was all over the hill. I was down in the creek. I climbed up a tree. I was always disruptive. But one of the more recent ones that you might relate to was when I wrote Woman Now or Loose, I couldn't get it published. I couldn't get it published at first because there was no precedence for a man writing a book to women, and nobody would take a risk on it. So I had to self-publish to get started, and then the publisher later came along and took it. I shouldn't have never let him take it. I should have kept it out there. That book ended up selling 7-8 million copies. And I was selling it out the trunk of my car. What was disruptive about it was all the women's magazines were written by women to women about women. They'd never heard a man talk. So everything you ever learned about men, you either had an experience with a man or a woman told you. So men become a mystery, and being married to a mystery is dangerous. Or birthing a mystery that you don't know how to raise because you know how to teach him how to be a good woman, but you don't know how to teach him how to be a good man. Because you never heard a man talk, you never heard a man think. You misinterpret my silence. You don't understand that I'm not silent because I don't want to talk to you, that I do nonverbal communication, that we don't process out loud unless we've been raised by an influencer that has influenced us to process in a way that is not typically masculine. Okay, I said that right. Okay, so understanding that, it caused Woman Now or Loose to explode, but it was disruptive. It was totally disruptive. I was ahead of the Me Too movement. I was talking about child abuse and molestation and rape and domestic violence when nobody in the pulpit was saying that stuff. I was doing it years ago. For the last almost 35, almost 40 years, I've been doing that kind of stuff. But it was totally disruptive. Hey, but it worked. It ended up in the Georgia Dome and the World Congress Center and the Phillips Arena, all filled up with people to the point of overflowing. I have a plaque that was put in the Georgia Dome that says I broke the Billy Graham records and the Super Bowl records for attendance through Woman Hour Loose, a man talking to women. Don't be afraid to do something crazy if it's in your heart to do it. And even if nobody believes in it and they won't publish it and they laugh at you and they think it's crazy, do it anyway. Do it anyway. I wrote the book Soar, and at the time I wrote Soar, the publisher said, that's not gonna work. Business books are not selling well. I said, look. Okay? I think we were on the New York Times bestsellers list for about 16 weeks, 12 weeks, something like that. It was soaring because I knew that our community needed to hear about soaring in life. Am I right? We've had so many sorrows and not enough soaring. And so Soar was written to tell you how to build the plane like the Wright brothers. How to build.
You said the Wright brothers, by the way, not the White brothers. This one.
The Wright brothers built the first airplane in a bicycle shop. I use them as a metaphor because you don't have to have everything you need to build everything you see. I feel like I'm talking to somebody. I don't know who it is.
I know. Time is wrapping up, Bishop. But everybody here that's listening to this conversation, everybody that's going to read this book, I know immediately they're going to think, I want to go be disruptive, right? So I want to know, how can someone think their way into disruption without being destructive?
When I started talking about the flour and the eggs and the sugar and the milk and the butter, and that in order to make it be a cake, you have to disrupt it in the mixing bowl, the outcomes teach you whether the disruption was worth it or destructive. If what comes out of the disruption is the cake, then the disruption was worth it. But if I'm so busy protecting the flour that I won't disrupt it, it will never reach its highest potential. Okay, some of us are so afraid of making waves, making noise, drawing criticism, drawing attention, that we never reach our fullest potential. What happens is, instead of having noise outside, you got noise inside. I shoulda, I woulda, I coulda, I wish I could do it again. Then you get bitter and miserable and hard to live with, because a person who has deep regret can be very hard to live with. I would rather have failure than regret. At least I know I tried it. At least I answered my question about it. People talk about how Peter walked on the water and he began to sing, and all the preachers preach about it, he began to sing. I think, shut up, he got to walk. He's the only disciple in history that got to walk on water. What are you talking about? And got Jesus to walk him all the way back to the boat. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. So can you imagine the disciples sitting up having lunch at Starbucks or something like that? And Paul was talking about, I speak 5 different languages. And Matthew saying, well, I was a tax collector for years. And Peter said, hey, I walked on water, dude. I literally walked on water in front of everybody. Okay? Nobody was ever able to say that they took a hike or went jogging in a storm on the water but Peter. And yes, he got in trouble, but it was worth it. Because he ends up having an encounter that he would have never had and an escort back to the boat, and he made it safely through.
That's right.
That's us. Don't be afraid of getting your feet wet.
That's right. You know, I call Bishop the Drip Jakes because he be so clean all the time. But I'm gonna start calling him Bishop the Disruptive Jakes. Thank you, Mr. Jakes. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.